If you follow these 5 steps, you can pretty much guarantee that you will not get yourself into trouble. You won't, be on the phone with tech support, and you'll have a good, properly designed system. So, zoning considerations, load calculations, grouping similar rooms with similar conditioning requirements. So you don't want to group rooms that have, this room is totally comfortable, but this room is so warm during the summer. Maybe not consider pairing those 2 rooms together in your design, right? What other rooms on this level are similar to this room? Well, these other rooms over here on this east side of the home are very similar. Group those rooms together. Never take rooms from different floors, first and second floor. You don't ever want to do a east-west design. Don't ever do first and second floor west, first and second floor east, and expect it to be great. You're still going to have comfort issues up on the second floor and a variance in temperature. Don't microzone or overzone. Don't go into a zoning design and assume you have to put a thermostat in every single room. You don't need that kind of depth. You don't need that kind of control. Be mindful of large glass, large loads. Great rooms. Great rooms are a perfect example. A lot of them were built on the back of somebody's house. They have 3 outside walls. People like them to be filled with tons of glass. A lot of them have big, high cathedral vaulted ceilings. Totally different environment than the rest of the house. That room probably deserves its own dedicated thermostat. And then be mindful of east and west, load shift, sun moves around, where is it beating on this house, where is the load at any given particular part of the day. Number 1 rule, or first rule, I shouldn't even call it number 1. First rule, get the homeowner's input. This hands down should not be a skipped step. Don't be that salesman that can eyeball the house from the curb, know the tonnage and BTU, and also identify how many zones they need. You need to go through and have that customer tell you, how do you use your house? Do you still have kids in the house? Are you an empty nester? Do they come back from college? Do you have an in-law? Do you have a workout room? Gather all of this information from the customer that lives there, that knows where every single one of those issues and pain points are. Where you're over conditioning rooms, where you're under conditioning rooms. Get all of that information so that you can apply it to your design. I'll give you an example of probably one of the last houses that I zoned before coming to work here, and how I applied all of the 5 rules that we're going to talk about here. Second rule, load calculations. Now, I never suggested to do zoning. You need to whip out a computer and do a load calc on the house. You don't need to do manual J or that kind of thing. What you do need to look for are a couple of things. 1, does the room have enough supplies to handle the load? I have this room here. I have 4 supplies. I have a return back in the corner. If I go up top, I'll see that these are, I think, 7s or 8s. That would tell me that I probably have enough supply for this room to keep it comfortable. Now, I've seen attic spaces that were built out to be a bonus area, and the contractor could only get 1 register because everything's finished downstairs. He couldn't run ductwork, and he put 1 register that blasts into the room, and then he applies zoning to it, assuming that my 1 supply, but I put zoning on it, give it a thermostat, I'll be fine. No. You're overestimating the power. You still need to have the right amount of ductwork into a space. If you have a home that you guys built and put the system in, and you have a history, or you've done the change out, and historically this system works great, they just suffer from physics. Warm air rises, cold air falls. First floor is great because that's where the thermostat is at, and the thermostat doesn't know it's getting too warm on the second floor. Apply zoning to it. If you're walking into a customer's house for the first time and they say, you know what, this house is terrible. It's horrible to try and heat in the winter. It's horrible to try to cool in the summer. And you know nothing about it, at least evaluate the system. Does it look sized right? Do I have 3 tons of air conditioning and only 2 tons of ductwork? Do I have rooms without enough supplies? Are there inherent design issues? Some of that, for some of you guys that have been doing it long enough, you can probably get a pretty good feel for that by just eyeballing. If you don't, have that kind of experience, maybe just measure the ductwork, get your ductilator out, see if you have enough. Does it match my equipment tonnage? Just do some basic evaluation, look at the rooms, is there enough supplies, those kinds of things. So again, I don't want you to think that wow, to do zoning, I have to do a full manual J calculation like I would the size of a furnace and air conditioning. You may only want to do that if you're walking in blind and you're kind of have some speculation about the system that's been installed in that house. Otherwise, if you have that history and you guys put it in and it's been great, it's just uncomfortable second floor, that room, like the great room, put zoning on it, should be pretty safe. Third rule, put the thermostats within the zones that it is controlling. Where do you think the most common place, somebody installs zoning in somebody's house and they did this first floor, second floor, where do you think the most common place that we see a second floor thermostat get installed? Hallway. How close is the bedrooms on the second floor to the hallway temperature? Probably not very close. You have rooms, like you may have a room that's above an unconditioned garage. You may have a room that has 3 outside walls. It definitely has windows and glass, right? Does the hallway? It may not. It may not have any exterior walls. It may not have any windows. It is not the same climate as a room with the sun beating in it, right? So what would a solution be? You could put remote sensors on that and do an averaging of 2-3 rooms on your second floor and have it in the hallway. That's fine. This rule kind of plays into the fourth rule that we think every master bedroom should have its own dedicated thermostat. Who's paying for the job? If that customer, every night when they go home or go to bed, the thermostat, they go to bed at, we'll just say 10 o'clock. 9 o'clock, that thermostat comes out of setback, cools their bedroom off to 72 degrees, and when they come upstairs at 10 o'clock, that room is spot on, 72 degrees every night when they want to go to bed. How happy are they going to be? If the thermostat's residing in the hallway, and now the bedroom's more comfortable, but it's not really at set point, how happy are they going to be with their big investment that they made in zoning? Not as happy, right? So either make sure it's sensing and averaging rooms, make sure that, if the second floor is only getting 1 thermostat, put it in that bedroom. That bedroom deserves to be spot on every night when they go to bed. You're basically putting the control where they sleep, and those are the happiest customers. Now your fifth rule, create appropriately sized zones. This gets into don't microzone, don't try to put a thermostat in every single room. What we're talking about here is minimum zone size percentage of the total CFM. So, if you have a 5-ton system, you have how many CFM? 2,000, right? If you have a 2-ton system, you have 800, all right? So the more you cut a pie up into pieces, the smaller and smaller those slices get. The more zones you try to put on a HVAC system, the smaller and smaller your zones get. They become problematic. If you have a PSC, permanent split capacitor blower drive, an old system, and you're going to put zoning on it, you can easily go down to about 1/3 of the ductwork, 33%, and know that you're not going to have a problem job. You're not going to have to deal with a bunch of noise. You're not going to have some crazy bypass on there. You may not have to have one at all. You most likely won't. We'll talk about bypass design. But you can easily get down to that small of a segment of your duct system on that zoning system and know that I'm not going to have to call Arzel because I have some nightmare job going on because I did some crazy design. You can go smaller than this. It's just going to mean that you're probably going to eventually get to a point where you may have some static pressure issues. And when I say that, maybe just air noise. The air delivery in that zone may be greater than the customer likes, and for that reason we may have to put on a bypass. Bypasses are not like the ultimate sin. For a while California was trying to ban them on zoning systems. They went full circle and says, okay, you can go ahead and use bypasses on systems. The problem with bypassing is typically always been they either get oversized and or overly adjusted to open too much when the system is running, stealing valuable static pressure, taking a load off the equipment, other things that we'll talk about in bypass design. But if you have a variable speed, ECM, constant torque, whatever style motor, most or all equipment now is produced with those, you can get down to 25% of the ductwork, or less with little or no bypass when you use it with our HeatPumPro and our zone weighting. We'll talk about that as the day goes on if you're not familiar with that, but the panel basically gives you the control to tell the panel, this zone is too small to go to second stage W2 heating or Y2 airflow for cooling. We lock it into low stage so that we prevent it from overstaticking. If we get multiple zones or large zone calling, we can tell it you're allowed to go to second stage. But because we never try to put, we never try to put all 4 ton into that small zone, if we can lock it into low stage, we may only try to put 3 tons of airflow through there, whatever your equipment low stage capacity is. And then bottom line, don't overzone or microzone. Don't try and put a thermostat in every room. That HeatPumPro, if you look at the output, this would be your equipment connection where all your equipment ties on. We've actually given you 2 Y1, Y2 outputs, one dedicated for your air handler, whether it be a furnace or air handler to control CFM blower staging, and a separate Y1, Y2 condenser output that goes to your heat pump or air conditioning to control the actual BTU content of your equipment. And then we can, through that zone weighting, control when it gets a Y2 output for airflow and when it's held back in the first stage. That gives you greater control of your equipment. Other small zone alternatives, wild runs or dump zones, always probably a better alternative to putting a bypass in. When you put a bypass in, you're basically taking not only the excess static pressure and relieving it into the return, you're also grabbing a lot of those BTUs and putting them into the return, which takes load off of the equipment. If you could do a couple of wild runs or dump zone, putting it into some place that can handle that additional conditioning, that's always a better alternative than a bypass. Our lone zone, or what we call our smart slave zone board, gives you control of a zone or dampers with a thermostat, but it can't turn on the equipment. It's an accessory that can be added to any one of our zone panels. So if you've identified, hey, I got this tiny little zone here, I need to give it thermostatic and damper control, but I never want to allow this zone to turn on the equipment, then you would use that accessory. And then last but not least, if you have to use a bypass, that's fine. Just make sure that it's sized correctly and adjusted correctly. And then like I said, we will cover that. So let's take those 5 rules and the things that we just went through. I told you there was a house I zoned before coming to work here. I'm going to try and tie all those rules in, together the best I can. Does anyone remember what that first rule was? Homeowner's input. So I get to the customer's house, ring the doorbell, she comes and answers the door. What's the first question I ask her? Where are your comfort issues? And the first thing she told me was, you're standing in it. I mean, I literally just walked in this customer's house. I'm literally just 2 footsteps into the house, and she says, this is it. This is the worst part of the house. The house that I'm talking about is just outside of Chagrin Falls. It faces kind of southwest, and the whole front area of that part of the house is all glass, top to bottom. It looks like something should be in the hills of California, not necessarily nestled in Chagrin Falls. Very cool house, but she said, you're standing in the worst part of my house. All winter long, this is the coldest, draftiest, worst part of the house. All summer, this is just warm and kind of muggy and stuffy, and it's just terrible. All right, great, duly noted. Takes me through the rest of the house. Here's some areas, this is okay, this is whatever. She leads me around full circle on the first floor, and she says, oh, by the way, this is my husband's office. He says he's not getting the zoning unless he gets a thermostat in his office. Like, really? Like, okay. Now, that office had westerly exposure, had a fair amount of glass in it as well. I wasn't sure using the slave zone was going to be a great answer because you can't turn on the equipment. It wasn't going to be a small over conditioning area. It's a small under conditioning area. I need to be able to provide BTUs there. How am I going to do this? I thought then full circle coming into the customer's home, this is the worst area of my house. It's terrible all winter. It's terrible all summer. That particular area of the house, and I'm going off memory, I think it had like 2 7s up high and 2 7s down low. We never dampened them. We left them as wild runs. What we created was anytime the AC called over here, that front foyer and all that glass got air conditioning. When it called over there, the front foyer got heating. It got a blast of heating to take that load off. More importantly, when the husband went into his office, which by the way, I believe the first floor system was 4 tons and there was only 1 6-inch run in his office. It wasn't a very big office. I could give him a calling thermostat that could give him heat on demand, cooling on demand, because my smallest zone was not 1 6-inch run on a 4-ton system. It was 1 6-inch run with 2 7s up high and 2 7s down low. My smallest zone wasn't any longer too small. You see what I did there? So you can do things like that, and it prevented me from ever having to even put a bypass on the system. And according to that customer, you know, the one time I had contact with them after putting in the zoning, you know, she claimed like problem solved. It's great in here during the summer. I don't know about winter, but at least during the summer, you know, it solved the problem because every time the AC ran, that front foyer got conditioned. So, and then, you know, the other rules, of course, there was a separate system on the second floor. We zoned that as well, put a thermostat in the master bedroom suite. And in that particular case, they had 4 bedrooms, like 3, I think, for their boys and 1 guest bedroom. Put a thermostat on that one, and I did sensors, and we did averaging for all of those rooms. So that's kind of how you can kind of tie all those rules together. More importantly, I also had that background on that system. I knew that, you know, the equipment was sized well, the ductwork was good. It was just, you know, they had lots of glass and a lot of diversity and things of that nature. So how do you know if you're right? Most importantly, your customer is going to be satisfied. The one thing that I liked about zoning, probably over most other products that I put in, the results were almost immediate. You know, there were humidifiers I put in, but I'd have to tell the customer, like, give it a few days, get your humidity up in the house where it should be. You'll start to feel the comfort. You know, I had salesmen go in before me, put in, you know, quote and sell the highest end air conditioner and furnace that, you know, we offered, and that customer was left with the impression that, you know, my new system is so efficient, the utility company is going to be paying me money to heat and cool my house. And I would go back to that customer's house, you know, and eventually they'd have all the bills on the counter, and I'd be like, am I saving the money that I should have been? Because I thought, honestly, when the salesman told me how efficient this thing was, I thought I'd have like almost no bill. Like, we're still going to use gas, still going to use electricity, you're going to have something, plus your utilities went up, plus it was a hotter summer last year. I have no idea if you're saving the money, should or not, right? I could put in zoning, and they knew that night when they went to bed that it did exactly what they wanted it to do. It could be 94 out when I pull out of the driveway at 5 o'clock, and that night when they go to bed and their bedroom's 72 degrees and they never over conditioned the whole rest of the house, they knew right then and there, like, aha, now I know what I bought. Now I know what this stuff does. And there was no waiting period. So I really enjoyed that. You're going to maximize the effectiveness of the system. Like I said, most cases, there's going to be considerable energy savings involved. The only time we don't see that is, you know, somebody abuses it. Hey, now I can set this thermostat to 65, you know, or we also saw another customer that I can turn all the rest of my house off, and I'm only going to put air conditioning into my living room when I'm in my living room. Well, while the rest of the house is going up to 83, 84 degrees and building up, you know, humidity and load and everything else, the returns are still pulling air from an 83, 84 degree house that's unconditioned, and you're trying to, you know, I'm going to insta-freeze just my living room. Well, it's not going to perform well, and it's probably not going to save you money because it's going to struggle. It's just going to have to run and run and run. Any cooling you put into there, it's going to try and just find its way into the rest of the house. And then, you know, just bottom line, better comfort throughout their home or building, right? Follow those rules. Should have zero problems, zero issues with, you know, customer HVAC systems or complaints. I mean, those are pretty simple, should be not intimidating.